Pardon? Right now we are doing this newspapers. We'll do it in public administration class, right? Let everyone also be there. So let me first tell you about, yes, we have started, right? Let me first tell you about the objective of these classes. As you know, at the end of the day, your entire preparation for this examination, as I keep on saying all the time, it starts and ends with newspaper reading. And you have so many newspapers, and you also don't know what to read, how to read, and how much to read also. And more importantly, whatever that is there in the newspapers, will it be sufficient for you? Also not. So that is the reason why what we will do is that, as I mentioned, every day for around half an hour, we will try to cover the important topics, both from your say prelims or mains, and more importantly, both for your GS as well as public administration. That is what. So around 25 minutes, half an hour means we will not be able to cover maximum 2 or 3 topics in a day. Even if you take 2 or 3 topics in a day, in 6 days you are covering at least 12 to 15 topics. And if you take the entire current affairs, if you take entire current affairs, there will not be more than 200 topics. That is what you must remember. Not more than 200 topics will be there. So obviously we can cover all of them very easily as we continue with our classes, right? That is what we will be doing. So let us start today with this Indian Express. I have seen one very good topic called the developed country goal. In Indian Express, if you are to see, I have put the newspaper also in our Telegram group, right? I have put the also newspaper in our Telegram group. You can see on the explained page, right, the developed country goal. Can you see that? Right, the developed country goal. So this is what our Prime Minister has spoken about. What our Prime Minister has spoken about as part of his Independence Day speech is how India can become developed country. Goals, he said, is to become a developed country. That is what he said, how to become a developed country. So the question here is, what is a developed country, and what are the factors that are coming in the way of India becoming a developed country, and how India can become a developed country, as our Prime Minister says, by 2047. These are all the things, and this topic you can say is there in almost all papers of your general studies. In paper 1 it is there, in paper 2 governance, in paper 3 economy, in paper 4 ethics also. Look at this topic from our examination point of view, from all these 4 papers. As I keep on saying, what you must do is never try to categorize any topic from any paper point of view, or polity or economy or history. What you must remember is that you must focus on interlinkages. That is very, very important. So try to cover the topic from all dimensions. So let us look at what the newspaper article had given, more importantly what they have not given, and how to cover those things also which are not given. As I keep on saying all the time, newspaper reading does not mean reading only what is there in the newspaper. It does not mean reading only what is there in the newspaper, always going beyond what is there in the newspaper. So look at what it says. So what is a developed country? That is what the question asked. How do we define a developed country? For a very long period of time, it is the United Nations which has defined developed countries in terms of what we call gross per capita, or net per capita income, or gross GNI per capita. What do you mean by that? The simple definition given is what is your per capita income. Depending on it, you can be categorized as either developing, developed, or underdeveloped. As you can see here, according to United Nations, low-income countries, wherein the per capita income is less than, say, $1,085. According to United Nations, low-income countries are whose per capita income is less than $1,085. And what are those countries? Mostly African countries, Latin American countries. You say Somalia, Sudan, Zambia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ethiopia. These are all the countries whose per capita income is less than $1,000. They are categorized as low income countries, right? Then lower middle income countries. Lower middle income countries whose per capita income is between $1,085 to say $4,255. This is what we say, lower middle income countries. So India comes in this second category because our per capita income is around $2,100. It is around $2,100, our per capita income, right? So we come here. In fact, we are slightly above low income countries because it is not close to $4,000, it is close to $1,000, right? We are slightly above low income countries. Here, what are the countries you find here? Most of these South Asian countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, India. These are all the countries which are part of low income countries, South Asian continent, right? And if you look at it recently, Bangladesh per capita income has gone past India's per capita income also recently, right? Then upper middle income countries. This is what United Nations says, between $4,256 to $13,205. Upper middle income countries. These are all mostly the Southeast Asian countries, Middle East. They are all upper middle income countries. You can see here, South Africa is there, Brazil is there, China is there. They are all part of upper middle income countries. Then at the topmost level, you call them as rich countries or developed countries or high income countries above $13,000. Here, at the top you have Norway with $84,000 per capita income, and USA $70,000 and UK $45,000. But what we say here is that this kind of classification is not accepted at this point of time at the global level. Why? Because what are the reasons why? These are the things that UPSC will be asking us. Why per capita income cannot be the criteria? Why? Because per capita income is not the true indicator of standard of life. It is not the true indicator of standard of life. For example, when we say that India's per capita income is say $2,100, it does not mean that every person in the country is earning $2,100. It is not, it does not mean that every person is earning $2,100. There are so many people, who are earning much less also. So that is the reason why this criteria was not accepted. It is not accepted by the countries around the world. And that is the reason why a new criteria had come up called Human Development Index, SDI. Human Development Index. And this Human Development Index, it takes into consideration three important factors. This HDI takes into consideration three important factors. One is what we call standard of life in the form of long and healthy life. The second one is good education and decent standard of living. These three things are taken by Human Development Index, right? Long and healthy life, good education, and finally access to better health care, decent standard of living. So how do we define this decent standard of living? That is when again a new criteria had come up called multidimensional poverty index. multidimensional poverty index. This multidimensional poverty index takes into consideration 10 various indicators to decide poverty. It takes into consideration 10 different indicators. Please remember, MDPI was asked also in your polity governance paper last year, before last year. So coming back here, these are all what we call factual aspects which you find in any of the textbooks. It is not at all difficult to find these factual aspects in any of the textbooks or in the articles in newspapers also. Now the question that has to be asked here is, how can India move from this lower middle income countries to at least low income countries, right? To at least low income or low income countries. How can we move towards these things, right? This is where what we call the analysis is important. You take the case of China, as the article mentions, in 2005, China's per capita income also is same as what India's per capita income is now. What is India's per capita income now? $2,100. And what is China's per capita income now? It is above $10,000. China's per capita income is almost above $10,000, right? Now, in fact, you can say it here, $11,890. So, if you achieve the same kind of growth rate as China in the last 17 years, if India also achieved the same kind of growth rate that China has achieved in the last 17 years, we can also go up to at least what you call $7,000 or $8,000 of per capita income, right? From $2,100 to go up to at least $7,000 or $8,000, we need rapid economic growth, right? The question is how to achieve this. As our Prime Minister has said that 2047, that means in the next 25 years, we need to grow at least at a minimum 8 to 9% per annum to become part of what we call upper middle income countries. Upper middle income countries. India right now is part of lower middle income countries. So how can we do that? That is the question that UPSC will definitely ask. It can be asked in your economy, it can be asked in your governance, it can be asked as a case study in your ethics paper, right? It can be asked as part of social issues, because you cannot become a middle income country unless we ensure active participation of women, right? As we discussed in our classes also, at this point of time, participation of women in employment is around 20%. We have to move up to at least 45% to become part of middle income countries. So what can be done? What should be done? So what are the things that India must do in the next 25 years or so? Let us try to see those things, what it can do. As I said, this information can be used in any of your GS papers, what it can do, depending on the question that is being asked, right? It can be used. First and foremost, as I said, we must improve your capital output ratio, ICOR, incremental capital output ratio. Investment is necessary but not sufficient. Investment is necessary but not sufficient. Investment is necessary but not sufficient. We give too much of importance to investment. It is necessary but not sufficient. As we studied in our, if you remember, in public policy rationalist paradigm, if you remember, we spoke about these things, linear models, right? What we say here is that we must make sure that we are moving towards more technology driven economy, as our Prime Minister rightly pointed out. Coming a decade is going to be the decade of technology with 5G technologies, right? So first and foremost, we must move towards more technology related growth. The first and foremost we have to do is that, so that we can become part of the middle income countries. Middle income countries. You must move towards more technologically driven, where you are talking about artificial intelligence, robotics, automation. Why? Because I'll give you again one more example. Why? In 2007, India was growing at 9% per annum. This was the period we were growing at 9% per annum. What did we do? We took this 9% growth rate for granted. When we were growing at this 9% for continuously for 3-4 years almost, we took it for granted that this 9% growth rate used to be there. But what happened? It did not. We immediately fall back. We immediately went back to 6%, 5%, 4% growth rates also. Before Corona had struck India, in 2020, the first quarter, India was growing at 4.5% per annum. It was growing at 4. Why this 9% growth rate had come down to 4.5%? This is where we talk about the second one is a policy environment. We need to create proper policy environment. What did China do from 2007 onwards? What did China do? China invested heavily in these what we call high-end technologies. China invested heavily in high-end technologies. What are these high-end technologies that we talk about? What are these high-end technologies? In those days, 3G, 4G and 5G. And then it invested in artificial intelligence. It invested in robotics. It invested in automation. If you look at China's growth trajectory, it can offer a huge amount of invaluable lessons for a country like India. What are these? China, as part of globalization, started with what we call low-end products, which are manufacturing products which use labor-intensive technologies. Immediately, China has realized that this kind of advantage is only for a short period of time. So it has shifted all its focus to high-end technologies, because of which it has achieved 12% growth rate, 13%, 14% growth rates also. On the other hand, what India did, when we were growing at 9% per annum, that was the time when UPA was in power, right? When we were growing at 9% per annum, what we have done, we have used all the increased revenues to finance our subsidies. What we call political populism. This happened all over the country, almost each and every state. You must be watching the arguments in the Supreme Court. The problem is that these subsidies have a moralistic arguments. They don't have any economic rationality. That is where again the problem comes up. Almost every state in India, every central government that had come to power focused only on what we call redistribution of wealth. They focused only on redistribution of wealth rather than generating more wealth. They only focused on redistribution of wealth. So what happened? When we were growing at 9% per annum, we have never really bothered to invest in technologies. This was the biggest mistake committed by UPA government. It was the biggest mistake. That is the reason why we say that the decade of 2010 was the lost decade as far as India's development is concerned. And of course, now we are paying the price. So if you have to again grow at 9% per annum to become part of the so-called middle income country, what you have to do is that you have to completely, radically alter your policies, economic policies. The government must invest in high-end technologies. It must create a proper policy environment for the private sector to invest in these high-end technologies. Why we are talking about these things? Because the reality is completely different. As you can see in the articles written by Arvind Pangaria and other people, the government taxation policy is focused only on generating more revenues in the short term rather than creating wealth in the long term. This is where it was problematic for India. We were focusing more on only generating wealth, right? generating revenues in the short term. That is the reason why, since the time BJP had come to power in 2014, these customs and excise duties, which were around 10%, have increased to more than 20% also. When you are doubling your customs and excise duties, are you able to produce those technologies in your country? No, Make in India is a failure. And are you allowing your producers to, assemble those technologies in your country? Again, it is a failure. Why? Because with almost 18%, 20% import duties, you are not creating any proper policy environment. This is another thing that you have to do, to create what you call the wealth. Next thing that you have to do is legal reforms. Today, Times of India has a very good editorial wherein it had spoken about the fact that almost 70% of the cases in India are pending for the last 20 years. So you need immediately legal reforms. You need immediately legal reforms. Unless we implement these legal reforms, it is almost impossible for India to attract investment, both domestically as well as externally. This is another thing that we have to do. Next, what else can we do to move on to this what we call middle income countries? Next important thing is manpower utilization. Manpower utilization. We have huge amount of what you call manpower, right? Huge amount of manpower. India is still in the process of what we call benefiting out of, we are still in the process of benefiting out of demographic transition. We are still, at least for the next 10, 15, 20 years, we can still have demographic dividend. But the problem is that there is a very possibility that this demographic dividend can become demographic liability. And for how to utilize this manpower, you must focus on two important things: education and health. We must invest heavily in both education and health. This is another important policy reform that we have to implement, right? This is another important policy reform that we should be focusing on, right? Then what are the other important reforms? As we have said, another important reform that we are talking about here is gender participation. We must increase the participation of women in development process. It is less than 20%. If you look at developed countries, more than 90% of the women participate in the labor force. It is only 20%. We must double it at least in the next 10-15 years. This is what another important thing that we have to do to become part of the middle income countries, right? To become part of the middle income countries. Next, what else that we have to do? Next thing is we have to reform our bureaucracy. Another important thing that we have to do here is reform our bureaucracy. Very important. Bureaucracy should focus on outcomes. Bureaucracy is coming in the way, whether we like it or not, it is coming in the way of this rapid growth process. We must reform our bureaucracy. Legal reforms, governance reforms, automation, ICR, then more participation of women, then focus on this education and health. These are all some of the things that we have to do in the next, say, 15 or 20 years to achieve the goal of becoming part of middle income countries. Obviously, you can find these kind of questions almost in all your papers of general studies. As I said, newspapers will give you only factual information. They don't give you analysis. As you can see in this article here also, it spoke about all these indices, right? It spoke about Human Development Index, and it spoke about these GNI per capita and everything else. But how it can be done, this has not been given. That is what I say newspaper reading is all about. You have to go beyond what is there in the news, right? I think only this topic itself has taken a lot of time. No problem, right? We will, as I said, even if in our next say 60-70 days of classes, we can cover at least 60 topics. Every day we will cover. Tomorrow I will take up this topic about this. Today you must have seen in the in these newspaper editorials about the sports bodies. The question definitely will be asked in your polity governance paper. Sports bodies. Please remember, there is no defined syllabus as far as UPSC is concerned. Sometime back in polity governance paper, the question was asked about why Indians are not able to get gold medals in Olympics. In what way it is related to polity? So obviously, 2-3 things here. One is the FIFA has suspended Indian Football Association. Second, the same kind of fate is awaiting our Indian Olympic Association also. The same kind of fight also can be seen in other sports bodies also. So tomorrow I will take up that sports bodies issue. What are the major issues and what could be the solutions? That is what we will be doing every day for half an hour. We will take up one topic at least every day, as part of our current affairs. As I said, this is only voluntary in nature. Our class will start at only 11:30. Right? Yes. Encourage individuals. See, the problem is that India is not doing badly when it comes to financial investment. We are not doing badly when it comes to financial investment. Our stock markets are vibrant. They are doing very well, our stock markets. The problem is not with financial investment, how to convert that financial investment into physical assets. That is where it is problematic for India. This is the economic issue. We are getting good amount of money through stock markets, right? But how to convert that financial investment into productive assets? That is where the problem is. But again, the amount of money I'm talking about, amount of money. Nowadays, if you look at it, take the case of cryptocurrencies. Which country has the largest market for cryptocurrencies? India. Right? We have the largest market for cryptocurrencies. The problem is how to channelize that financial investment into productive assets. That is where the problem for India in the next 15-20 years. As I said, the issue here is that we have to move towards automation. Inevitably, you have to move towards automation, whether it is automobile sector or any other sector. If you are moving towards automation, automatically it results in job loss growth, not jobless growth, job loss growth. And there will be huge amount of unemployed, army of unemployed people. How to balance that economic growth with equitable development? That is where the problem, and that is where India is going to face a major issue, because unemployment is not only an economic problem, it is also a social issue. Those disgruntled people can become part of anti-social organizations also. They can be easily attracted towards secessionism or terrorism or anything else. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Obviously, see, this is what the government of India has done in 2019. Our corporate sector kept on complaining with the government of India that India is a country with very high taxation regime. We are a country with very high taxation regime. Especially our corporate taxes are very high. That is what they kept on saying. So the government of India has said that let us cut down our corporate taxes. And we wanted them to channelize whatever the amount of money that they are getting to productive investment. So that is the reason why the government had lost around 1.8 lakh crores of rupees, 1,84,000 crores by cutting the corporate taxes. Unfortunately, what happened? Corporates have used all that money which they got as taxes concessions to give more salaries to their employees, to give more dividends. They did not invest that money. So you cannot, what you have to remember is that you cannot promote investment by cutting down taxes. You have to promote investment by creating infrastructure. On the other hand, what you are doing? You are giving more concessions to the rich people in the form of investment. And we are collecting, and what did the government of India do? They have lost around 1.8 lakh crores, 1,85,000 crores as part of corporate tax reduction. You have to recover that money. How did the government of India recover that money? By increasing the petrol and diesel rates. And who suffered the most? Poor people. Why? Because the real income of the people had come down. When the real income of the people comes down, their consumption demand also will come down. That is what exactly India is facing now.